Ladies and gentlemen, Rigathi Gachagua is about to humiliate President William Ruto and the entire UD brigades in Ol Kalou. But Rigathi Gachagua should not start celebrating early, because I've been observing the developments in Ol Kalou. The government is determined to win that seat. But yesterday, they were exhibiting this kind of confidence. I want you to listen to this lady very closely.
Hurumia sana DCP. Mnasema sijui ati nini, mmeleta ule mtu anakaa kama Matthew huyu wa Manywele. Yaani mnataka MP Ol Kalou akuwa wasimu kama huyo Matthew. Hatutakubali. Sisi watu wa serikali, come drought, come rain, we shall carry that seat. Liwalo na liwe. Hata kama ni kuipa. We have all the tools. Tuko na machine yote tutaipa. Lazima tuokoe watu Ol Kalou kama serikali.
And something also happened earlier in the morning, and most people really celebrated. There were huge turnouts in almost all the polling stations. And I told one of my friends, who is Moha, who is actually in Ol Kalou currently, is a journalist, that they should be very careful. Because my experience with politics is that any moment you see people turning up very early, especially the women, you must be very careful. Because in most cases, those are the people who are transported, and they are the genuine voters. And the reason they are allowed to turn up very early is that they're mobilized, they are put there, they vote very early, and then they leave. By 10, 11, midday, chaos normally erupts.
So, a contingent of anti-riot police have just come here at AC Primary School. On that side, those are the anti-riot police. On this side, these are the residents. What is contentious here is getting access into AC or Ol Kalou Primary School. This is their biggest polling station by the number of registered voters. And the residents here have one call. No vehicle gets into the school. So right now you can see the residents are clapping because the anti-riot vehicle is retracting. They are leaving. They are leaving.
But I don't want to assume that's what happened there. Rigathi Gachagua is going to humiliate Ruto, because if you look at the turnout, shocking, huge. That cannot be for a by-election. It means these guys want to send a message. Listen, watch this turnout. And personally, I don't know how they are going to try to rig it, because already you can clearly see their attempt to do that based on the arrival of the DCP candidate alone. Because normally you can always tell. I remember in there was a by-election in Ugenya when David Uching defeated Karane, the ODM candidate. We went there as ODM and we were very confident. But when we visited 2 polling stations with my friend Aduinyang, we said no, hapa tumepoteza. We just came back and relaxed in some hotel there. The way these residents received the DCP candidate tell a story that the turnout and the voting is going to be in favor of that DCP candidate. And normally, if you want to understand the feeling of the voters, you don't need to look for young people. You don't need to look for women. Women are normally reserved. You look for some old men and talk to them. Listening to what this guy is saying.
Hawapati chochote. Tunaletewa reli hapa, hakuna kitu tunakula.
Na ile boti iko pale juu.
Wachana hizo boti. Sisi ni watoto kuja kutengeneza hizo boti. Kudanganya watoto kama unanunua watoto seremende hapo unawaambia ati ni boti. Tumebebwa na boti, tumezeeka, tumefanya nini? Unaletewa watoto boti kwa hiyo ni lake. Ama ni dam. How stupid you are. Kwani ukumjinga kiasi gani? Unakuja danganywa hapa. Huyu mtu ametutesa, tumeisha, hatuna chochote, hata kitu ya kukula tunakosa. Hata dubi hakuna ya kunywa.
Dubi ni uji.
Dubi ni uji.
Ladies and gentlemen, between now and 6 is going to be critical. Will the DCP candidate prevail based on the ground? Or will the power, the deep state, prevail? Because if you have been following, there's attempt to force the police to take charge. But the residents are saying no. Up to now, one thing they've succeeded is stopping any stranger from getting into the polling stations. But the most important part of the election is between now and 6. In fact, also during the period of transporting the elections material. But for this matter, the results are actually going to be announced at the polling stations. Remember, according to IBC, once you vote, you are expected to leave. And therefore, they will not require the presence of any other individual other than the agents, the candidates' agents or the party agents around the polling stations. Normally, that's where now these games begin. But should Rigathi Gachagua win this seat? Because for me, I'm putting my bet. In fact, I thought it was going to be a close contest. But this one is not going to be a close contest unless the government would accept that they have been defeated, but they just want to narrow the gap. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to explain to you guys why those results are going to be humiliating to President William Ruto. Before I do that, in case you're watching this channel for the first time, take a second or two, click the subscribe button so that next time we produce a video like this, YouTube will automatically notify you. Ladies and gentlemen, when the government embarked on this campaign in Ol Kalou, you could tell the trajectory they were going to use. In fact, they were going to use all tricks to try and win this seat. At the end of the day, they ended up spending billions of money, gave residents a lot of things, and promised so many others. Which means if they were to lose, the biggest loser is going to be President Ruto. They have exposed him. And therefore, Rigathi is going to be the biggest winner. And for me, number one, the amount of resources used in this by-election. Was it really necessary to spend the kind of resources we've witnessed in Ol Kalou? Because even that mzee who spoke there probably was a beneficiary. But you heard him talking like sisi sio watoto to be given boats in a dam. So for me, William Ruto ought not to have used resources. Because if he used resources like that, and then the residents, let's assume, they end up voting the DCP candidate, that's middle finger. And not only middle finger, it's going to convince Rigathi and the team in the mountain that indeed you can just take someone's money, take whatever they bring on your way, eat, and then vote for your choice. And that's going to be dangerous for William Ruto, because William Ruto's politics majorly is normally about resources. So that's number. Number two, Rigathi Gachagua, after this, if he's going to win, is actually going to stamp his authority as Mount Kenya kingpin. If anybody still had doubts that, it's Uhuru Kenyatta, or we can still, Rigathi is going to stamp his authority. By stamping his authority, he's not going to be in a position now to persuade the mountain to vote wherever or in whichever direction he would want them to vote. And that's dangerous, which means from Ol Kalou, he can then decide to dictate to the people there how they are going to vote, who they are going to vote for, whom they are going to vote out. So that's going to be very important. Number 3, let me talk about it, the issue of the turnout. You see, when this by-election emerged, Rigathi Gachagua promised to deliver it. Remember, they were defeated in Mbeere North. And the government wanted really to use the same playbook they used in Mbeere North. But you see, Rigathi is a different breed. He really didn't go to the ground really forcefully. Rigathi didn't go to the ground forcefully to campaign. But he was directing and controlling these campaigns from somewhere. And if you want to know that Rigathi Gachagua is a dangerous politician, despite the fact that he didn't go to the ground, he has been able to emotionally appeal to the residents there. And that's why these residents turned up. And they turned up not to do anything. They turned up to stop UDA from winning. In fact, I remember seeing some old women who were brought from elsewhere to come and vote. These guys were fishing them out and kicking them out. So it means he has now managed to emotionally appeal to the hearts of the residents of the mountain. In fact, he has now managed to take them to 2013 when Uhuru Kenyatta was campaigning. And importantly, and this is something which he really wanted, the momentum for 2027. After this election, I cannot assure you, if he's going to win, he's going to sustain that momentum up to 2027. If you understand Kenyan politics, you'll agree that that's exactly how William Ruto managed to penetrate the mountain. There was a by-election in Juja, which Moses Kuria's candidate won. Then there was another by-election in Kiamba a few months later, and Moses Kuria wanted to sponsor a candidate there, Chama cha Kazi. Because he had won this, he had also hoped that he was going to win. But Ruto had just registered UDA, just like Rigathi had just registered DCP. So Ruto decided that for me, let me sponsor my candidate, Kawanjiko. And he managed to defeat Uhuru Kenyatta. Kiambu was Uhuru Kenyatta's county. And that is the momentum which William Ruto used in the mountain to stamp his authority. And importantly, if Rigathi will be able to stop the government from rigging, then his vote protection strategy for this by-election is effective. Which means in 2027, his work will not be difficult. Because in 2027, you won't have police officers focusing on one constituency alone. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what you think. That's my take. Until next time, this is Makwiny.